Hey, what's happening? Welcome to Maych TV. So, transfer window shut. I meant to do this a few days earlier, but I've been ill. So here we are, catching up on the things that have been burning my head out post-transfer window shutting. I'm going to start with two videos on this. The first is this one. We're going to look at the squad depth, and the second is revisiting my stupid summer transfer predictions. That should be good fun. I'm waiting till I'm going to do that one after this one. But let's begin. Let's look at Liverpool's squad depth, because we spent the summer hemming and hawing, oohing and ahhing, wheeling wildly from being quite sound to being absolutely outrageously annoyed at Liverpool's transfer business and how they've gone about that transfer business. But now that we know what the squad's going to look like, let's talk through it. Let's see where we're at, and let's see if there are any sort of criminal failings in that department. We'll go through it. Let's go with the goalkeepers first and foremost. Obviously, Alisson Becker remains the number one, best goalie in the world. Absolutely fine. There was never going to be an issue there. Understudies remain Caoimhin Kelleher and Adrian. So let's start with that. There was a really strong rumour, if you go back to the start of the summer, from the end of last season, that Kelleher was going to ask for a move, or he was going to be moved on. There was pressure being put on him. And I sort of hypothesised at the time that you were opening a real can of worms. I think there's an understanding there that he's a really, really good goalie, And I wondered whether there might be something this summer where you looked at like a 1 or 2 season loan to a really good team. And I equated it to Thibaut Courtois going to Atletico Madrid from Chelsea, really making his name. And that was a really unusual way to do things, but it's quite revolutionary in its own way, whereas it looks very much like Liverpool have gone, no, we're not messing with you. And the issue they've got, of course, is that the young goalies underneath, obviously Marcelo Pitaluga, there's a great video of him doing the rounds last week, making some fabulous saves in training. And then you've got a couple of the other guys who we got a little glimpse of in pre-season, a little glimpse of, not really ready. They're certainly not at Kelleher's level. And then you've got Adrian, of course, who I think is, by all accounts, I know people don't think he's a great goalie or whatever. He's fine. He's absolutely fine. I don't think Liverpool would be in a great situation if he was forced to play a string of games, like in the title-winning season. Obviously played a massive role then, least of all helping us win the Super Cup. But he's obviously a very good trainer. He's a big character. He's a very good trainer, and I think this will be his last season. Then Liverpool have got a real decision on their hands. But right now, the goalkeeper department is pretty solid. The young lads underneath are getting better, and the lads we've got a really good age range covered there, and it's interesting to see what happens with Kelleher this season. The back line, so I've done this in the box midfield formation, so effectively 3 at the back. Konate, Van Dijk, Robertson is your first choice. Now, what we've seen already this season, Konate's injured, Van Dijk is suspended, and Robbo, actually, who I had the biggest sort of question marks around and had a little struggle at the start of the season and in this system at the back end of last season, has actually been really good. The last game and a half, I think, in particular, his best game in quite a while, came at the weekend against Aston Villa. Underneath that, we've seen Joe Matip and Joe Gomez, and I think 2 weeks ago, I think there would have been real question marks. Well, not real question marks. There certainly were people questioning the levels of those footballers. Both on the day, brilliant, I think. And I think the question marks are more around Matip, I think, who's more injury prone and is older, ultimately. But I think again, from the Villa game, if you're looking at Liverpool playing their 3rd and 4th choice centre-halves, they both did really well. And Gomez, I would still contend, has the ability there to get more out of his career. Now, he could end up just a Premier League quality footballer, which would be a fine career. And he could just be that for Liverpool, to be fair. But I don't know what his ceiling is anymore. But I think that's fine. The issues we've got is obviously on the sort of left-sided centre-back. Jarell Quansah had a really good pre-season, and we've seen him now come off the bench a couple of times and be perfectly solid. I don't know enough about him to know what his level is. What we do know is that Liverpool were very, very interested in Levi Colwill. Signed one of those stupid contracts at Chelsea, put and paid to that one, of course, at least for the short term. Liverpool were linked with Piero Hincapié from Bayer Leverkusen. We've been linked with a number of left-footed centre-halves. Obviously, Joško Gvardiol goes to Manchester City, who was the big one of the summer. And it means Kostas Tsimikas is technically in the running as the understudy there. But I'm not sure, because in pre-season we really saw Tsimikas used as an inverted fullback flipping the inversion from the other side, from Trent's right-hand side to the left-hand side. So I don't really know where he sits, but right now I've kind of got him in that pecking order rather than the other, because I think we're quite well stocked in midfield, which I'll come to now. Moving into it then, you've got Trent, obviously the first choice, right back / inverted, which I think is sound. We saw Conor Bradley in pre-season. I was really impressed by Conor Bradley. I was really, really impressed. He's picked up an injury subsequently. I think it's a stress fracture of his back. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments on that. But he's out for a little while. So we don't have a truly natural Trent understudy. I've, again, hypothesised that Bajcetic might be used in that way, and I saw a little quote of him the other day saying how, yes, he'll get games in the six, but he might find that he gets games in other positions. I think we want a lot of that this season, but until I see Bajcetic doing it, I've not put him there. What we know right now is that we did see Conor Bradley playing right back, play inverted right back in pre-season, so he's the only other player we've seen truly do that. Every other time has been when we flipped it to the other side, which is still a possibility, of course, but regardless. Endo is the 6. Now, what I've done is I put Bajcetic and Thiago underneath him as the understudies. Thiago's an unknown, brilliant footballer, absolutely. I'm really pleased that we've kept him, because if you've made Thiago Alcantara your James Milner in the squad, how good is your squad? Let's just think about that for a moment. Take a moment. Pause, breathe, think about the idea of your squad is so good that Thiago Alcantara is your James Milner. Wonderful, that, isn't it? Does that make you feel warm inside? Yeah, it does me. What I've done with the midfield further forward, I've obviously got Szoboszlai and Mac Allister. Now, of course, we've seen Mac Allister utilised more as a 6. Now, what we don't know is that a matter of making do? So, obviously, he starts ahead of Endo against Villa, because I think we wanted a more progressive 6, and we want to give Endo the time to settle in as well, of course. What we don't know, and I've put Gravenberch as an understudy on the left of the 8s. He could be on the right of the 8s, and he could be the understudy 6 as well. I've said on a couple of videos already, I feel that's what he'll be groomed towards. But until I see it, I think if you think of it like this, as you drop Trent back into a proper right-back position, you make the Endo, Bajcetic, Thiago role the lone 6, and then effectively Gravenberch is playing left of the midfield 3. He can do that. He's done that before. So I think it'll be one or the other for him. But I've put him in there because I think it's an interesting talking point. And I think Bajcetic and Thiago are possibly more likely to be understudy 6s. But again, Thiago, I've honestly got no idea. I'm liking the idea of him being a bit of a free hit this season. Obviously, you've got Jones and Elliott to throw into the mix. Curtis Jones really good again against Villa. Just in a really solid understanding of the system, good press, good maintaining possession, good taking it over, really helped to make the midfield far more solid than it's been. And then look at the front line. Salah, Gakpo, Diaz, and then, take your pick, who's the starters of those. Underneath, finally, Salah's got an understudy in Ben Doak, still very young, very raw, but what a talent he looks to be. Darwin Núñez and Diogo Jota, who both could, you could start 5 of those lads in any given week and not make your team any weaker. Salah's the regular starter. We've seen it already. Gakpo's had a little slow start to the season, but I back him to come good. Darwin Núñez, since the Newcastle game, came into the Newcastle game, won it, absolutely electric, was a real handful against Villa as well. Diogo Jota started the game well instead of his goal return. Luis Diaz has looked brilliant, same. So I think we're exceptionally well stocked up front. I think the midfield, there's obvious question marks around a real nailed-on long-term number 6. What this next period after the international break is going to be interested in telling us is, where does Bajcetic get used? Where does Thiago get used? And ultimately with Endo, what do we want from that position? Because if you find that he's just more often benched and we're playing Mac Allister in there, then the idea of us going for more of a stopper might be the wrong idea. We might be looking for a more progressive defensive midfielder. And then somebody's got the legs and the energy, because Endo looks, I've not seen enough, so this isn't a categorical opinion. He looks a touch slow. I'm not sure that's great, but he has got obviously great sense and great position. He just needs to get up to speed in the league, and he can counterbalance that a little bit with game intelligence, I think. Some issues remain, again, to the point now, if you've got Matip, Gomez, Robertson and Quansah at the moment are the available centre-halves. If you were to get another injury, then let's say, any of them, then Quansah's starting games, and below that you then got some issues. So it feels to me like we're at least one. I think we're one short. I think what you want to do, what we were really lacking, is that Matip replacement. Because who's going to take Joel Matip's place in the squad? Or I don't mean as a squad player. I mean someone who's going to be one of our defenders, but who's good enough to play first team football. Matip is, as we've seen. I think the idea that he's totally washed up is a bit premature. But as with all of the defenders we've got now with Konate, Matip and Gomez, shades of the days of Lovren and co. Lovren, Matip and Gomez, we've always had kind of injury-prone second choice centre-half. There was a bit of a passing of the baton in 18-19. Like one had fallen, he'd hand it off just in time to the next one. He was fit enough to carry it for a few more games. I really think we need to go big in the transfer market at some point and get a really great other centre-half. And if it's someone who can... I think we need two. I think someone who can cover, like Gomez, I think who can cover centre-half and right-back, and someone who can cover centre-half and left-back, because that's what City have done. They've stocked themselves with quite functional defenders. Either they can go in a number of directions. They can either go out wide, or they can move into that inverted slot in DM. It feels like that's the next level of investment for Liverpool. I'm pleased with it. I think the other one, of course, just looking at the picture, is the Trent understudy. I'm not sure exactly how you do that. Maybe with someone who, again, is a bit multifunctional, doesn't quite do it in the same way. And obviously, there's lots of mentions of like Josh Kimmich and stuff like that. But fine. But someone who's multi-purpose, and I need to see what we do. So if Trent, who's obviously out injured at the moment, if he misses that game back, it's Wolves, right? If he misses that game, what do we do? Do we shift the system? Do we change formation? Do we go back to more of a 4-3-3 and just put Gomez at right back? Or do we drop someone else into that who plays right back nominally but comes inside? Do we ask Gomez to do that? Big questions, because they're the real glaring holes are that. I don't know if Quansah's good enough. So I don't know if he's good enough to be the long-term Robbo replacement. I don't know if Conor Bradley's good enough to be a really solid understudy for Trent Alexander-Arnold, and there's fitness concerns around Matip, Gomez and Konate. But I think the squad's pretty good. I really do. I want to see what Gravenberch is as well. I think we've signed a real player in there. Certainly want to develop, not necessarily absolutely 100% ready now the way that Szoboszlai and Mac Allister are, but that's fine. I do think that's fine. I think we've got players to carry that while everyone gets up to speed for the coming weeks. I think we've got goals. I think we've got tons of goals, loads of energy, loads of pace. We've lowered the average age of the squad immensely in losing Fabinho, Henderson and Milner. So yeah, whisper it, but I think that squad's capable. Can it win the league? I don't know. I think it's City's league to lose ultimately, because they just won the treble. They're the best team on the planet. They've been there and done it. They've had a little bit of enforced upheaval, a little bit of deliberate upheaval. It remains to be seen, but it's a path to madness thinking City are going to be anything less than a 90-plus point team. Can this be a 90-plus point team? We've certainly got the lads in the same as City. We've got lads who've been there and done it. We've still got Alisson, Van Dijk, Robertson, Trent, Thiago, technically, yeah. Salah. We've got a good core of world-class footballers who've been there, done it and won it all. And if you're adding fresh impetus and legs and energy to that as well, then I think we're as strongly positioned as Arsenal to have a really, really good challenge for it. What do you think? Are Liverpool good enough to get back to challenging Man City this season? My overall thoughts going into the summer was, I think this was a bit of a summer of rebuild. And a year of rebuild, a bit like going back to 17-18 again, where just be wild and excessive and crazy, and then maybe next summer you have one or two little pieces and then you can be really solid. I think the defence is still an issue. I'm not totally sure we're as rock solid defensively as we were, when we signed Van Dijk and Fabinho and Alisson. That took us up, we solved the back end. We made ourselves very, very difficult to beat. That remains to be seen whether we've got that. I think you need to have a brilliant defence as well as a brilliant attack. You need to be a perfect team to win the Premier League, I think, these days. And I'm not sure we're perfect, but we're wild and we're interesting and we're fascinating and we're going to win some really good football games this season. I think the fun's coming back. If we can pick up some silverware along the way just to wet the whistles and grease the wheels, yeah, I'm encouraged. Let me know how far can this squad go? What are the glaring holes? Is there any I've missed? Let me know in the comment section underneath. Who you're really most looking forward to watching this year as well. All that in the comments. Listen, drop a like and stay tuned later this week. I'm going to be doing my review and reaction to my stupid summer predictions. With like 2 weeks left to go of last season, I predicted Liverpool's summer transfer business. It went not great. Check out that video, subscribe for that, and yeah, other than that, I'll see you all very, very soon. Have a blessed day. Ta-da.